Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Jayo Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Radhe Jayo Gauranitai 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 Jayo Gauranitai Jayo Jayo Prabhupada 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 Jayo Jayo Prabhupada Jayo Jayo Gurudev 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 Jayo Jayo Gurudev Harinam Sankirtan ki jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. 1 second. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtapraeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatir Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagar Jata Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Shri Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vamcha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji's Mataji's welcome you all to today's discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam as part of the Bhakti Vaibhav course. So before we start the session today, there is just one announcement. Today we are starting a new Bhakti Vaibhav batch for Hindi language, Hindi speaking devotees. And as such, the batch is full, but I seek all of your prayers and blessings that we are able to serve these devotees nicely. And what it also means is I am still trying to figure out if it is feasible to take two Bhakti Vaibhav sessions in a day because it is very intense. And if that goes well, then it's fine. But till the time the rhythm is set, I request all of your cooperation. Like few days, we may be able to cover slightly less number of verses. But let's try to go more in depth rather than worrying too much about the number of verses. And in case it doesn't work, then I might need to move that batch to Saturday. So let us see. This is one. Now starting with the next chapter, this is chapter 18. Maharaj Parikshit cursed by a Brahmana boy. So we see we are in the final portion of the secondary inquiries, the next second set of questions that were asked by the sages of Naimisharanya to Suta Goswami. And these questions basically related to three things. One was the history of Srimad Bhagavatam. Second was about the speaker and the author and the hearer of Srimad Bhagavatam, namely Srila Vyasadev. How did he feel inspired to compose, to write Srimad Bhagavatam? And about Shukadev Goswami. And final portion of the inquiries, it dealt with the hearer of Srimad Bhagavatam, Maharaj Parikshit, specifically the birth, life, and death of Maharaj Parikshit, leading to the appearance of Srimad Bhagavatam. And as part of his activities, as we discussed in the last chapter, Maharaj Parikshit reward and punishment given to the Kali Purusha, the personality of Kali. And while discussing this, ultimately, the purpose of Parikshit Maharaj's life description was to go until the appearance of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Suta Goswami, being mindful of this fact, starts this particular chapter with a very peculiar verse. And we have to understand the connection of this particular verse with reference to the earlier discussion. We saw a similar thing happening some time back when Lord Krishna was about to leave from Hastinapur to Dwaraka. Actually, the birth of Maharaj Parikshit was supposed to come after the prayers of Queen Kunti, but Suta Goswami, in his ecstasy of describing the loving relationships between Lord and his pure devotees like Kunti Devi, Uttara, Pandavas led by Maharaj Yudhishthir, and Bhishmadev, he took a detour to describe the interaction of Lord Krishna with all these great devotees, including the prayers offered by Kunti Devi and the prayers offered by Bhishmadev. And subsequently, the again the track was brought back to the original inquiries by the sages of Naimisharanya by asking Suta Goswami to again come back to the birth of Maharaj Parikshit. And then the birth and the glorious characteristics of Maharaj Parikshit were described and his activities. Now, the start of the chapter 18, it again begins with the Suta Goswami very briefly describing about Maharaj Parikshit's glorious birth and immediately moving to the portion of his departing from this world. So, which is the ultimate section before the appearance of Shukadev Goswami and appearance of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Suta Goswami is again aligning himself to the flow by coming to the topic of Maharaj Parikshit's glorious departure from this world. So, before we start reciting the verse, let's read a inspirational quote from our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. Anyone would like to read through, please raise your hand. So we request devotees one by one. Hare Krishna. Gunavati Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Pranam.
Dandos.
Srila Prabhupada Uvacha, a pure devotee never deviates from devotional service under any circumstances. Pure devotees are described as Samamati, which means they never deviate from devotional service under any circumstances. It is not that devotees worship the Supreme Lord only when happy. They worship Him even when in distress. Happiness and distress do not hamper the process of devotional service. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam says that devotional service is ahituki aprihata, unmotivated and uninterrupted. When a devotee offers devotional service to the Lord without any motive, anya bilashita shunyam, his service cannot be hampered by any material condition, apratihata. Thus, a devotee who offers service in all condition of life can conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 16, 34th verse, purport by Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji. So we see this particular description about a Samamati, about a devotee who is always equipoised in his disposition in devotional service, whether in favorable circumstances or whether in not so happy, unfavorable circumstances. A devotee is steadfast. And there are so many glorious examples. And one example we are currently discussing and studying, that of Maharaj Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit was born in the most unusual, very rare circumstances where before even being born out of the womb of his mother, Maharaj Parikshit was attacked by the Brahmastra of Ashwatthama. And he saw Krishna then consistently practice Krishna consciousness throughout his life. And we will see some of the verses describing the consistency of Maharaj Parikshit. And finally, when the time of his departure was announced, which was materially speaking in an untimely manner, at a totally unexpected moment, when Parikshit Maharaj was in the prime of his youth, he had a wife whose beauty was even comparable to the damsels of the heaven, and very obedient children, very well taken care of subjects, obedient subjects. But still, when the time came, Parikshit Maharaj did not think for a moment before retiring to take complete shelter of Lord Krishna. So such devotees are glorified in Srimad Bhagavatam as Samamati, as those who are equally disposed either in happiness or distress, continuing their devotional service. And these devotees are also called as Ajita Jita. So this word is not mentioned in Sanskrit, but Srila Prabhupada gives the translation. What is that? Yes. Thus, a devotee who offers service in all conditions of life can conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, Supreme Lord Krishna, who is Ajita, who is not conquered by anyone, that Supreme Lord also becomes conquered by devotees through their pure devotional service. So, this is the position of the devotees. So, let us start with text 1. All right, so let's go through the verse first. Devotees who would like to recite, keep your hands on raised. So we request one by one. Hare Krishna. Lalita Vinodini Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Suta Uvacha.
Suta
Suta
Uvacha
Uvacha.
Yo Vai Droniyastra Vipulasto.
Yo
Yo
Vai
Vai
Droniyastra
Astra
Vipulaso
Viplusto.
Namatur Udare Mrataha.
Namatur Udare Taha.
Anugrahat Bhagavataha.
Anugrahat Bhagavataha.
Krishnasya Karmanaha.
Krishnasya Karmanaha. Translation.
Translation, yeah. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Suta Goswami said, due to the mercy of the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, who acts wonderfully, Maharaja Parikshit, though struck by the weapon of the son of Drona in his mother's womb, could not be burnt. Purport. The sages of Naimisharanya became struck with wonder after hearing about the wonderful administration of Maharaja Parikshit, especially in reference to his punishing the personality of Kali and making him completely unable to do any harm within the kingdom. Suta Goswami was equally anxious to describe Maharaja Parikshit's wonderful birth and death, and this verse is stated by Suta Goswami to increase the interest of the sages of Naimisharanya.
Thank you, Maharaj. So, although the birth of Maharaj Parikshit has been described earlier on in great detail, in order to bring the focus towards the glorious departure of Maharaj Parikshit, Suta Goswami, just to increase the interest of the audience, is again uh, mentioning this one particular verse describing the glorious birth of Maharaj Parikshit. And specifically, Maharaj Parikshit has been addressed by Suta Goswami in this verse by few few important qualities. First quality that is mentioned, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Important quality is mentioned as Anugrahat Bhagavataha. The word Anugraha means the special mercy. So Parikshit Maharaj, that Parikshit who has received the special grace, special mercy of the Supreme Lord. And what type of Supreme Lord? To address Lord Krishna, Suta Goswami is mentioning one more adjective. And what is that? Krishna Sya Adbhuta Karmanaha, that Supreme Personality of Godhead who is especially known by his wonderful qualities, by his Adbhuta Karmanaha. So Parikshit Maharaj got a special anugraha, mercy of that Supreme Personality of Godhead whose qualities, whose activities are wonderful. So what sort of wonderful activities? When I was searching for this word, Adbhuta Karmanaha, I found a class given by Namanishta Prabhuji also with the same quality of Lord Krishna being glorified. Adbhuta Karmanaha, his activities are extraordinarily wonderful. So, like there are so many activities of Lord Krishna which are Adbhuta Karmana, but just to name a few for our understanding, we see that after the battlefield of Kurukshetra, when Yudhishthir Maharaj was feeling the guilt of having been the cause of the killing of so many Kshatriyas, and Lord Krishna, while externally he was trying to pacify Maharaj Yudhishthir, internally as a Paramatma, Lord Krishna made sure that Yudhishthir Maharaj was not fully convinced or pacified, because Krishna specifically wanted to glorify his pure devotee Bhishmadev and guide and instruct Maharaj Yudhishthir in the proper discharge of the duties as a Kshatriya ruler. And to please Bhishmadev by giving him both his own personal darshan, Lord Krishna's own personal darshan, as well as letting Bhishmadev see his dear grandsons, the Pandavas, being the rulers of the world at the time of his departure. So Krishna wanted to fulfill many purposes, but specifically to fulfill all these goals or purposes, Lord Krishna, he did not let Maharaj Yudhishthir be convinced with his explanation. So he was acting externally in one way, apparently trying to convince his cousin brother, elder cousin brother, Yudhishthir Maharaj, but internally Lord Krishna was acting so as not to let him be fully convinced, and ultimately letting that glory go to Bhishma Dev, another pure devotee of Lord Krishna. So this is Lord Krishna's Adbhuta Karmana. Similarly, the second photo picture that is shown on the screen is Maharaj Parikshit being protected within the womb of his mother by Lord Krishna. So at the time of Ashwatthama releasing the Brahmastra second time, targeting the womb of Uttara, Lord Krishna was already seated on the chariot, about to depart from Hastinapur for Dwarka. And just when the chariot was about to depart, Uttara came running towards Lord Krishna, begging his protection. And begging protection not for her, but for the child within the womb. And Krishna, while still remaining available and visible in front of everybody else who was present there, he immediately entered the womb of Uttara and personally made rounds around the womb, personally offering the protection to the womb by his Sudarshan Chakra, by the disc weapon of Lord Krishna. Krishna made sure that the child remains unharmed even from Brahmastra. So the point is, Lord Krishna often does all these Adbhuta Karmana, wonderful activities, just for the glorification and protection of his pure devotees. And such Adbhuta Karmana Supreme Lord was also responsible for the protection of this very, very special child, Maharaj Parikshit, within the womb of his mother. So then we proceed. Radhika Ratnanga Mataji, Hare Krishna, you want to recite? Hare Krishna.
Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna
Hare,
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Yes, Mataji.
ब्रह्मकोऽपीति तद्यस्तु
ब्रह्मकोऽपि
Brahmakopitatyastu
तक्षकत्प्राणविप्लवत्
तक्षकात् प्राणविप्लवात्
नासम्मुमो होरुभायत्
Naso
मोरुहाय
भगवती अर्पितसया
भगवती
Bhagavati. Translation.
Translation. Prabhu, I have to read the highlighted ones, Prabhu.
Translation first.
Translation.
Furthermore, on the left hand side.
Furthermore, Maharaja Parikshit was always consciously surrendered to the personality of the Godhead, and therefore he was neither afraid nor overwhelmed by fear due to snake bird, which was to bite him because of the fury of a Brahmana boy.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you,
So
Prabhu. Hare.
here, immediately after describing the birth of Maharaj Parikshit, Suta Goswami is not going into the details because those details are already been described. Now, what is pending is the glorious departure of Maharaj Parikshit. And in order to route the discussion towards that particular topic, Suta Goswami is glorifying Maharaj Parikshit's quality as that devotee that because he was protected within the mother's womb by Lord Krishna, when the second time the danger came, a major danger came in the form of approaching death towards Maharaj Parikshit, he did not become afraid or he did not call out for Krishna that, my dear Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Lalita Vinodini Mataji, just help mute any background sounds, Mataji, please.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Let me make few more devotees co-host. All right. So Maharaj Parikshit did not call out for Krishna's help for protection when the death approached. In fact, Srimad Bhagavata mentions in the section where Shrungi the immature son of the Brahmana Shamika Rishi, when he cursed Maharaj Parikshit in his immature state, Bhagavatam mentions that Maharaj Parikshit very well was equipped to counteract that curse, and he could have protected himself had he desired so with the help of Lord Krishna. But Parikshit Maharaj considered it as the will of the Supreme Lord and did not protest. In fact, he preferred to prepare himself well for that ultimate examination, for the ultimate death, rather than seeking help from Lord Krishna. So this particular quality of Maharaj Parikshit, that he was not afraid even in the face of the ultimate calamity for a living entity, which is death, he was not at all budged or afraid. And this particular quality of Maharaj Parikshit is further explained by Srila Prabhupada in the purport. And some of these points, in fact, all of these points are all applicable in our life. So we will see with the help of few examples. Radhika Ratnanga Mataji, please continue. Purport. You can read the complete purport, Mataji. Or any other devotees, if anyone wants to read. Rohini Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Purport. A self-surrendered devotee of the Lord is called Narayana Parayana. Such a person is never afraid of any place or person, not even of death. For him, nothing is as important as the Supreme Lord, and thus he gives equal importance to the heaven and hell. He knows well that both heaven and hell are creations of the Lord, and similarly, life and death are different conditions of existence created by the Lord. But in all conditions and in all circumstances, remembrance of Narayana is essential. The Narayana Parayana practices this constantly. Maharaja Parikshit was such a pure devotee. He was wrongfully cursed by an inexperienced son of Brahmana who was under the influence of Kali, and Maharaja Parikshit took this to be sent by Narayana. He knew that Narayana, Lord Krishna, had saved him when he was burnt in the womb of his mother, and if he were to be killed by a snake bite, it would also take place by the will of the Lord. The devotee never goes against the will of the Lord. Anything sent by the God is a blessing for the devotee. Therefore, Maharaja Parikshit was neither afraid of nor bewildered by such things. That is the sign of a pure devotee of the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you, madam. So can anyone mention in one or two points what are the prominent qualities of a Narayana Parayana Bhakta that come out from this explanation by Srila Prabhupada? What qualities can we understand to say that a particular devotee is Narayana Parayana, completely surrendered unto Supreme Lord? What are the characteristics? You can look at Srimad Bhagavatam purport. Usha Kamat Mataji, unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Yeah,
Hare Krishna.
a devotee never goes against the will of the Lord, and whatever effect of or consequences he faces, he thinks that it is a blessing for him. Whatever
Yes.
reversals come in his life, he considers to be that to be a blessing for him. So he is never afraid or he's never overwhelmed by such reversals.
Yes, and in both circumstances, not just during distressful circumstances, but even when the things are favorable.
Yes.
Why I am saying that even when the things are favorable, we see from the prayers of Queen Kunti that remembering Krishna and keeping one's feet on the ground during when the things are going our way is even more going our way, then sometimes due to the material energy, due to the material nature, sometimes a person may get swayed away. So a Narayana Parayana Bhakta, as Mataji rightly mentioned, whether in favorable circumstances or even in difficult circumstances, such a devotee is always fully surrendered towards Lord and is very steadfast. Prema Prakash Haridas Prabhuji wanted to share anything else, Prabhuji?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Parayana is a devotee who is totally and completely surrendered to the Lord, and he has no obligation left for any other responsibilities or duties in the world, in the material world.
Yes. So just one caveat in this, that a devotee does full justice to all his responsibilities, but yes, as far as obligations or the karmic responsibilities that are concerned, like Bhagavad Gita mentions so many different types of debts that we inherit as soon as we are born, including debts towards our parents, forefathers, sages, Mother Earth, cow, devatas, etc. All these debts that we inherit the moment we are born, they are already taken care for a Narayana Parayana Bhakta. And we see in Srimad Bhagavatam, such Narayana Parayana devotees are glorified throughout. Bhagavatam glorifies these devotees left, right, and center. So what does it, how do the aspirations of a Narayana Parayana devotee differ from that of a ordinary devotee? So some of these lines, those of you who are not conversant with Hindi, I will try and explain in English. Like aspirations of an ordinary devotee, this is a very famous song. Uh, of course, we don't want to criticize any person, but when we are trying to understand the levels of devotional service, we need to have our discretion clear. So this particular song, Srila Prabhupada, when he saw it, Srila Prabhupada did not appreciate exactly the mood and mentioned to the devotees that our mood in devotional service is slightly different and not exactly like what is mentioned in the song. So in that particular song, this is a very famous song, devotional song, where it is mentioned that this devotee is aspiring to have the darshan of Radha and Krishna at the time of his death. And you might say, what is wrong in that? It is good, right, to have darshan of Radha and Krishna. But along with that, the devotee is putting so many conditions, like the place of death should be near on the banks of the Ganges, and it should be near the Vamshivat on the banks of the Yamuna, and Lord Krishna should appear in a particular form wearing pitambar. Radha and Krishna both should appear. So he is putting A, B, C, D, E, F, G, S, so many conditions that Lord should fulfill when it is time for that devotee to leave his body. But a pure devotee's aspiration is not like that. We will come to this beautiful Vaishnav song, which has been composed by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which explains the aspiration from this from a specific Vaishnava, which is not exactly on the platform of pure devotional service. Let us consider our own scriptures. This particular mantra 17 is taken from Ishopanishad, where what is the devotee praying? Om Krito Smara Krito Kritam Smara Krato Smara Kritam Smara. That means, oh my dear Lord, please don't forget whatever I have done for you. And you might say, is this the prayer of a pure devotional service platform? Not at all. Then why it is mentioned? Because Ishopanishad is Ishopanishad. It is not Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is ultimately at the platform of pure devotional service and nothing else. But Upanishads as such, they just don't cater at the platform of pure devotional service. So the point is, a pure devotee's aspiration. Let's see the prayer by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He says, Sampade Vipade Jivane Marane. So this is a very beautiful song and one of Srila Prabhupada's favorite one. Manasa deho geho jo kichu mora arapilu tu apade nanda kishora. And he says, Sampade vipade jivane marane. That means in good times or bad times, my dear Lord, make sure that my mind always remains focused on you. And whether you want to protect me or whether you want to have me killed, it doesn't bother at all. Whatever is your will, let it be, let it come true. But I want to eternally remain your devotee, completely loyal towards you. Nityadas pratitva adhikar, and that is your right to treat your servant the way you want. Janamobi moi icha jadi tor bhakti gruhe jani janma how more. That even if I need to be born again in this material world, I don't mind. But my only request to you, my dear Lord, is that even if I need to take birth as a kitaka, as a as an insect, let it be in the house of a devotee, so that there is a good chance that I would get to hear your holy names, and I would get to eat the Mahaprasadam of your devotees. So that is the aspiration of a pure devotee. Do we see a difference between these two set of prayers on the left hand side and right hand side? Prabhuji's Mataji's Hare Krishna. What is the difference that we see from aspiration of a ordinary devotee versus that of a Narayana Parayana Bhakta? Hare Krishna, quickly, so that we can complete all the points that we have planned. Do we see a difference between these two set of prayers?
Yes, Prabhuji, very clear.
Yeah, yeah. So don't get confused that even devotional scriptures, they are catering to a different level of audience. Like Ishopnishad, of course, we have it as part of our syllabus, but Srimad Bhagavatam definitely stands much higher in terms of the stature of devotional service that is taught and explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. And we will see some examples of such Narayana Parayana devotees which are glorified in Srimad Bhagavatam. So let us try to recite these verses. These are beautiful verses uh, from Bhagavatam describing a very glorious devotee of Lord Krishna, Vritrasur. So please try to repeat these verses. Muktanam api siddhanam
Muktanamapi siddhanam
Narayana Parayanaha Sudurlabha Prashantatma Kotishwapi Mahamune. So in this particular verse, we see Parikshit Maharaj, he's glorifying a Prashantatma, a completely peaceful devotee like Vratrasur, that such a liberated personality is one amongst millions and millions of Siddhas, one amongst the perfected beings, who is Narayana Parayanaha, who is completely devoted to Lord Krishna. Sudurlabha Prashantatma Kotishwapi Mahamune. Koti means crores. Amongst crores, such a pure devotee of the Lord, Narayana Parayana, is very, very rare. And similarly, in the verse on the right hand side, we see Lord Shiva glorifying Chitraketu. So Chitraketu was Vritrasur in his earlier life, and Chitraketu became Vritrasur because of the curse that he received from Mother Parvati. So this is another pastime we'll discuss sometime, some other time. But we see that there was a misunderstanding between Chitraketu, who had received a body that of a Vidyadhara in the higher planetary systems because of his advancing spiritually. And one time when he was flying in an aeroplane surrounded by beautiful women from the Vidyadhar Loka, he happened to see Lord Shiva discussing Srimad Bhagavatam with his associates, and also other great sages like Narada and all were seated there also. And Lord Shiva was discussing about Vairagya, about renunciation, while having Mother Parvati, his own wife, seated on his lap. And Chitraketu Maharaj actually wanted to glorify Lord Shiva by saying that who other than Lord Shiva can discuss about Vairagya while having his own wife seated on his lap. So he wanted to glorify Lord Shiva, but Mother Parvati did not like it. She felt offended that her husband is being criticized by this living entity from the higher planetary system. And immediately she cursed Chitraketu by saying that he will take birth as a demon in his next life. And Chitraketu Maharaj, flying a plane in the sky, immediately got down from the plane and offered his Dandavat obeisances to Mother Parvati. And Srimad Bhagavatam mentions even in this particular context that Chitraketu Maharaj was on that level of devotional service that if he would have wanted, he could have counteracted the curse by Mother Parvati. But again, similar to Maharaj Parikshit not protesting, not counteracting, Chitraketu Maharaj decided not to protest and counteract this curse from Mother Parvati, but he humbly accepted her curse, paying his obeisances. And then, glorifying this pure devotee of the Lord, we see Lord Shiva glorifying such pure devotees that even if they need to go to Swarga, Apavarga, or Naraka. So Swarga is the higher planetary systems, and Apavarga means that place where the Pa, Fa, Ba, Bha, Ma, the Parishram, hard work, the Fena, the foam, Bhaya, Mrityu, etc., or Bandhana is not existing. That place, or even if such a devotee needs to go to Naraka, the hellish planetary system, he is not disturbed. So I'll just read the translation. Devotees solely engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, never fear any condition of life. For them, the heavenly planets, liberation, or and the hellish planets are all the same, for such devotees are interested only in the service of the Lord. So, in a way, Lord Shiva is pointing out the error in judgment that was made by Mother Parvati in understanding Chitraketu Maharaj that look, my dear Devi, you have cursed this devotee, but he is so humble and glorious that he has not counteracted. In fact, he has happily accepted your curse and is ready to face the consequences by being born as a demon. But because of the subsequent forgiveness and the prayers by Maharaj Chitraketu to Mother Parvati, he was also blessed with the constant remembrance, even in the body of a demon. So, what happens? Vritrasur, because he is born as a demon, naturally he has to fight against the Devatas. And there is a great fight between Indra, the king of heaven, and Vritrasur. And Vritrasur, although Indra was blessed by a specific weapon that was made from the bones of Dadichi Rishi, that is another story, but that weapon was specifically meant to overpower and kill Vritrasur. But Vritrasur, despite his enemy Indra having that particular weapon, he fought so valiantly that whatever weapons Indra was throwing towards Vritrasur, he easily caught hold of those weapons and threw those arrows and the spears back towards Indra. And one such weapon hit Airavat, and Airavat, actually the mace, mace of Vritrasur hit Airavat, the elephant of Indra, and Airavat tumbled few times backwards and omitting blood. And Indra became so afraid by this power and fighting power of Vritrasur that he basically became demoralized. He didn't want to fight any further. And Vritrasur was such a great devotee of the Lord. He was performing his dharma to fight against Indra while still remembering the Lord. So Vritrasur encouraged Indra and mentioned to him that, my dear Indra, you have got weapon from Dadichi's bones. What fear should you have? You should have complete faith in the words of Lord Vishnu that you would be able to kill me with this weapon. So get up, and Vritrasur himself taught Indra how he should kill him, how Indra should kill Vritrasur. And ultimately, based on the encouragement and the guidance given by Vritrasur, Indra cuts the neck of Vritrasur, and it takes 1 full year for Indra to behead Vritrasur using this weapon made from Dadichi's bones. And what is the result? Ultimately, the battle between Vritrasur and Indra, apparently externally speaking, is won by Indra. But what is the result? After Vritrasur leaves his body, after Vritrasur is dead, Vritrasur being the pure devotee of the Lord, he goes back home, back to Godhead. And Indra, remaining attached to his position of being the Lord of the heavenly planets, he remains stuck in this material world. So this beautiful story is narrated in Srimad Bhagavatam, where Srimad Bhagavatam both before the Vritrasur becoming Vritrasur, it glorifies Vritrasur's position as Narayana Parayana. And even after Vritrasur is dead, we see Parikshit Maharaj glorifying to Shukadev Goswami about the position of Vritrasur. So before his birth and after his death, both times this devotee is glorified right, left, and center by in Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is an example of a Narayana Parayana devotee, and there are so many such examples, but this is another example, the beautiful prayer offered by Kulashekar Alwar of South India, that my dear Lord, let the swan of my mind, while the body is health and healthy, let my mind be totally focused upon your lotus feet. Because when the old age comes and when the time of death comes, the body and the senses are so much out of our control that it is very, very difficult because of the bodily condition where the uh, mucus, bile, and air, they choke the throat of a person who is about to leave his body. And at that difficult situation, time, it will be very difficult to remember you. So while my body is health and healthy and mind is focused on you, let me give up the body straight away so that it is easier to remember you when at the time of my death. So this is again another Narayana Parayana devotee who is completely focused on remembering Krishna, even if it means to give up his body at the prime of his youth. He is willing to do that if that helps in remembering Krishna, achieving Krishna. So this is the nature prayer of a Narayana Parayana devotee. Any questions, comments, Prabhuji's, Mataji's? How a Narayana Parayana devotee is different from an ordinary devotee on an ordinary platform? And similarly, similar to this differentiating characteristic that we explained, when compared to the other transcendentalists like Karmis or Gyanis, for example, we see Karmis, they don't want to end their stay in this material world. They want to practically go on enjoying forever in this material world. Whereas the Gyanis, they are so much detached from this material world that they want to get out of this material world immediately and try for liberation. But a bhakta is neither of these. A bhakta, he doesn't mind, like we saw in so many verses, beautiful verses in the subsequent slides. He doesn't mind living in this world or living from this material world or going to heavenly planets or going to hellish planet. What is of paramount important for a Narayana Bhakta is constant remembrance of Lord Krishna and constant engagement in his service. So that is the difference between a Narayana Para devotee, a pure devotee, versus an ordinary devotee, plus a pure devotee versus other levels of transcendentalists, namely the Karmis or even Gyanis. How Narayana Para devotee is different from these other classes. Of course, Karmis, we can say that unless they come to the level of minimum to the level of Karma Yoga, they are not transcendentalists, but their aspiration is to enjoy this material world forever, as long as possible. Any questions, comments, Prabhuji, any thoughts anyone wants to share on these characteristics of a Narayana Parayana devotee? Hare Krishna, Prema Prakash Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes.
There is a question asked that what misunderstanding this concept of Narayana Parayana can cause amongst the devotee of Hare Krishna movement.
Okay, this is the question from the closed book set.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, let me just check, refer to the purport. Well,
I'm sorry, it is an open book question.
okay. Let me check on this and come back, Prabhuji. Okay?
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you,
Hare,
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
I'm just saying, is there any point which can be misunderstood?
The only point I thought probably is that the person who is not actually a Narayana Parayana can take an advantage of telling himself as Narayana Parayana and avoid all the sevas that he is otherwise compelled to.
But we see Narayana Parayana devotees, like for example, Ambarish Maharaj, he was engaged in all different types of services, engaging all his senses, right? Such a person is never afraid of any place or person. That means a Narayana Parayana devotee is even not afraid of going to heaven or hell. But as far as practicing devotees are concerned, that Srila Prabhupada specifically mentioned that we should not be too adventurous that even we will be in heaven or hell, because even while being in association of devotees, we are struggling to remember Krishna consistently. So the intelligent sadhana practitioner should immediately try to finish his or her responsibilities in this material world and try to perfect one's life, go back home, back to Godhead in this one lifetime itself. Like, say, for example, some advanced devotees like Prahlad Maharaj, he was not afraid of living in this material world and requesting Narsimhadev to have all the fools and rascals in this material world to be taken back home, back to Godhead, because he was confident of remembering Krishna even while in this material world. But we at our level as a sadhaka bhakta cannot take that stance, because we are literally fighting against Maya every moment, even while being in the association of devotees. So this is one point, but let me think thoroughly and come back, Prabhuji. Okay? Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Any other point or any other thoughts anybody wants to share, or any questions on the characteristics of a Narayana Parayana devotee, a completely surrendered soul? All right, let us proceed. Devotees who want to recite verses can keep your hands raised. Gita Pradeep Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Ustrija sarvatah sangam.
Ustrija sarvatah sangam.
Vijnata jita samstiti.
Vijnata samstiti.
Vaiyasakerjaho shishyo.
Vaiyasakerjaho
Gangayam swam kalevaram.
Gangayam swam kalevaram. Translation.
Furthermore, after leaving all his associates, the king surrendered himself as a disciple to the son of Vyasa, Sukadeva Goswami, and thus he was able to understand the actual position of the personality of Godhead, and at last gave up his material body on the bank of the Ganges.
Thank you. Thank you. 1 second. So this is a long purport. We won't be able to go through all the purports, but Suta Goswami is proceeding with his narration of Maharaj Parikshit, ultimately taking us to the point of Shukadev Goswami appearing in the next chapter. Continue this highlighted part and the next one.
Yes, Prabhuji. It is very difficult to find the Lord from the Vedic literatures, but it is very easy to know him by the mercy of a liberated devotee like Sukadeva Goswami.
Thank you. So here again, we see in the case of Maharaj Parikshit that when it came to perfecting his life and attaining Lord Krishna, he did take shelter of a pure devotee of the Lord, Shukadev Goswami, who apparently, externally speaking, he was just a 16-year-old boy. And there were so many great personalities who were assembled there to see to witness the departure of Maharaj Parikshit, including Srila Vyasadev, Narada Muni, and so many other great personalities. But they all chose Shukadev Goswami, although being very young compared to all of them, based on the depth of his realizations. So Maharaj Parikshit, he relied on accepting a spiritual master, Shukadev Goswami, in order to understand Krishna. And we cannot understand Krishna just by studying the Vedic literature, just by the bookish knowledge. We need a realized soul to guide us in our practice. So that's why the need of guru is there. Srila Prabhupada gives example often of a medical student, that while the medicine books are available in the market, just by reading those books, one cannot be a qualified physician, a qualified practitioner. To be a physician, one must learn those subjects and practice actual practicals under the apprenticeship, under the guidance of a qualified senior doctor. Then one will be able to qualify himself as a doctor. So we proceed. Continue, Mataji. This is a very famous verse, Prabhuji's, Mataji's. You will find even in our earlier slide decks, this verse being quoted quite a few times.
Yes.
No,
Translation, Prabhuji?
no. We should recite this verse. Usha Mataji, you want to recite?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Text 18.4. Nottama shloka vartanam.
Nottama shloka vartanam.
Jushatam tat kathamritam.
Kathamritam.
Syat sambhramonta kalepi.
Syat
Smaratam tat padambujam.
Smaratam tatpadambujam.
So here in this verse, we see Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Na uttama shloka vartana jushatam tat kathamritam. So those devotees who have consistently practiced in their life, what they have practiced? Uttama shloka vartanam, who have consistently practiced hearing and chanting about Lord Krishna, who is glorified by the choicest of the verses. Such devotees who have consistently practiced the process of hearing and chanting, they they don't have the problem of sambrama, they don't have the problem of bewilderment at the time of antakalepi, at the time of giving up their body, because their intelligence is completely fixed in remembering Lord Krishna. So, like we mentioned a few moments back, the prayers of King Kulashekara, that when at the time of death, when the body, the throat is choked with the mucus, bile, and air, and it is very difficult to function one's senses, they are completely going crazy, then it is very difficult to remember Krishna. But that difficulty does not arise for these personalities who have constantly practiced Uttama Shloka Vartana, who have constantly dedicated their lives to the process of hearing and chanting. They don't experience these difficulties. So maybe Prabhuji's Mat, I don't know whether this is part of the memorization, you can check. But even if it is not, I request all the devotees to note it down. And this is one of the very famous verse. Usha Mataji.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada ki jai. This was so because those who have dedicated their lives to the transcendental topics of the personality of Godhead, of whom the Vedic hymns sing, and who are constantly engaged in remembering the lotus feet of the Lord, do not run the risk of having misconceptions even at the last moment of their lives. Oh, looks like Prabhuji got logged out.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji's Mataji. Sorry,
Hare-
just give me 1 minute.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Some issue with the connection. Prema Prakash Prabhu, you can make me co-host.
Okay, Prabhuji. Can't locate you, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji got
Yeah,
logged
just
out.
Yeah, he
Prabhuji,
is
make
not
me
there.
co-host.
Sorry,
Hare Krishna. Make
Prabhuji,
me
I can't
co-host.
locate you. You are
Wait
not
a
there
minute.
in the participants.
How do I raise my hand? 1 second.
You will have to get out and come back again.
No, he's present, Prabhuji. I can see
Is
that.
it?
Yes, he should be there just after you in the participant.
Just after me, okay.
Prabhuji, you can just type P in the
I typed Pran, yeah, I got it. Sorry, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji. You are the co-host now.
Thank you.
Shall I make you host, Prabhuji?
Yeah, fine. So let's come back to the. Yeah, Usha Mataji, please go through the translation again.
Yes, Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada ki jai. This was so because those who have dedicated their lives to the transcendental topics of the personality of Godhead, of whom the Vedic hymns sing, and who are constantly engaged in remembering the lotus feet of the Lord, do not run the risk of having misconceptions even at the last moment of their lives.
Thank you, Mataji. So we will see what is this risk of misconception at the end of one's life or even before the end. So those who are not actively engaged in hearing and chanting about the Lord in their lifetime, they do run this risk according to Srimad Bhagavatam, and we will see with few examples. 1 second. Yes. So the same example of Maharaj Chitraketu that we were discussing earlier, where Chitraketu Maharaj was promoted to the higher planetary systems, namely the Vidyadhar Loka, and he was traveling with the beautiful ladies of Vidyadhar Loka. There was some misunderstanding, got cursed by Parvati, and needed to take birth as Vritrasur. So that story we saw. Let's come back to earlier part when Chitraketu Maharaj, before becoming a Vidyadhar, he was the king on this earthly planet, and he was basically he had all the facilities and comforts of the earthly kingdom except for one particular problem. He did not have a child. And it so happens that Chitraketu Maharaj, he once receives Narada Muni and Angira Rishi as guest in his home and in his palace. And Chitraketu Maharaj, after asking for their well-being and everything, finally admits to them the cause of his, what is lacking in his life, that is, he is not having a child. And Narad Muni basically mentions to Chitraketu Maharaj that, my dear sir, you are as such not destined to have a child, but because you are insisting, we can bless you so that you are blessed with a child. But there will be one problem, that this child will be both the cause of your happiness as well as cause of your distress as well. And Chitraketu Maharaj thinks for a moment that probably, the child may be disobedient or some issues like that, which are quite okay. But these are nothing in front of the joy of parenting. So I don't mind having this child who will be the cause of my happiness as well as distress. And when Chitraketu ultimately, basically, Narad Muni blesses Chitraketu Maharaj, and then one of his several queens. So he has got many queens, and none of them have had children so far. So one of his queens, Krita Dyuti, she becomes pregnant and gives birth to a child. And Chitraketu Maharaj and the queen and all other queens and everyone in the kingdom is completely happy. But then one problem happens, that because this particular queen, Kritadyuti, has begotten the child, Chitraketu Maharaj's attention naturally grows more towards her, and other queens, they become co-wives of Kritadyuti. They become very insecure that our husband is not giving enough attention to us as before, because this particular queen has begotten a child. And they, in their insecurity, they poison the child. And then Kritadyuti, as well as Chitraketu Maharaj himself, they become so much overwhelmed by lamentation and grief. And Kritadyuti actually starts cursing the providence. So before seeing some of these verses, how a even a sane living entity's intelligence becomes bewildered sometimes in the face of difficult circumstances. And to avoid that, what we need to do? Uttama shloka vartanam. We need to practice continuous, constant, regular hearing and chanting in our life. So I think we forgot to go through the purport. We will go through the purport and then we'll come back to the story. How Krita Dyuti's intelligence becomes bewildered because of these difficult circumstances. So what is the risk and how to mitigate that risk? We will see both these points. Usha Mataji, continue reading.
Yes, Hare Krishna. The highest perfection of life is attained by remembering the transcendental nature of the Lord at the last moment of one's life. This perfection of life is made possible by one who has learned the actual transcendental nature of the Lord from the Vedic hymns sung by a liberated soul like Shukdev Goswami or someone in that line of disciplic succession. There is no gain in hearing the Vedic hymns from some mental speculator. When the same is heard from an actual self realized soul and is properly understood by service and submission, everything becomes transparently clear. Thus, a submissive disciple is able to live transcendentally and continue to the end of life. By scientific adaptation, one is able to remember the Lord even at the end of life when the power of remembrance is slackened due to the derangement of bodily membranes. For a common man, it is very difficult to remember things as they are at the time of death, but by the grace of the Lord and his bona fide devotees, the spiritual masters, one can get this opportunity without difficulty. And it was done in the case of Maharaj Parikshit. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
So two things are mentioned here in the purport. It's a two-step process. One part of the process is the regular process of hearing and chanting from a bona fide representative from one's spiritual masters, from the pure devotees of the Lord. Regular hearing should be there. And second is, whatever we hear that needs to be digested, that means brought in our practice, that needs to be realized by proper engagement in the service, humbly rendering service, active participation in the service is what will turn that knowledge into realization. So we need to regularly hear and chant, hear specifically from a pure devotee of the Lord, and whatever we hear, we need to absorb it by engagement in physical engagement in Lord's service. Then that knowledge will turn into realization. So in case of Maharaj Chitraketu, it happened in a very long way, and we will see. First, we will see the bewilderment part. What exactly Bhagavatam means when it talks about misconceptions and bewilderment. So in the case of Kruta Dyuti, let's come back to that particular episode. Yes. So what happens after the child is poisoned by the co-wives because of their insecurity, the child dies. And then we will read a part of Bhagavatam here. Yes. Thinking that her child had been sleeping for a long time, Queen Kritadyuti, who was certainly very intelligent, ordered the nurse, "My dear friend, please bring my son here." When the maidservant approached the child who was lying down, she saw that his eyes were turned upward. There were no signs of life, all his senses having stopped, and she could understand that the child was dead. Seeing this, she immediately cried, "Now I am doomed," and fell to the ground. In great agitation, the maidservant struck her breast with both hands and cried loudly in regretful words. Hearing her loud voice, the queen immediately came, and when she approached her son, she saw that he was suddenly dead. So as soon as the queen Kritadyuti sees that the child has died, she is in great distress and lamentation. And what happens in that lamentation? Let us see what she has to say. The garland of flowers decorating the queen's head fell, and her hair scattered. Falling tears melted the collyrium on her eyes and moistened her breasts, which were covered with kumkuma powder. As she lamented the loss of her son, her loud crying resembled the sweet sound of a kurari bird. Kurari bird. Now she is saying, "Alas, O Providence, O Creator, you are certainly inexperienced in creation, for during the lifetime of a father, you have caused the death of his son, thus acting in opposition to your created laws. If you are determined to contradict these laws, you are certainly the enemy of living entities and are never merciful." That means Kritadyoti has started blaming Supreme Personality of Godhead and his judgment, his discretion, by saying that, "Oh Providence, you don't know in what sequence the things should be done. You have let this particular child die while the parents of the child are still alive, and thus you seem to not understand your own laws that you have created." And in the next verse, she is even more direct in her criticism of the Supreme Lord. What she says? "My lord, you may say that there is no law that a father must die in the lifetime of his son, and that a son must be born in the lifetime of his father, since everyone lives and dies according to his own fruitive activity. However, if fruitive activity is so strong that birth and death depend upon it, there is no need of a controller." So she is scolding Krishna basically that if the fruitive activity is everything, karma mimamsa, then why do we need a supreme lord? We don't need. There is no need of a controller or God. Again, if you say that a controller is needed because the material energy does not have the power to act, one may answer that if the bonds of affection you have created are disturbed by fruitive action, no one will raise children with affection. Instead, Everyone will cruelly neglect his children, since you have cut the bonds of affection that compel a parent to raise his child. You appear inexperienced and unintelligent. So we see Krutadyuti has got bewildered to such an extent that she has started criticizing the discretion and judgment of the Supreme Lord, saying, why did you let it happen that after so much of wait, long wait, you blessed us with a child, and now such a young infant child, it has died an unnatural death. So it is not supposed to happen. Why did you put us in these great difficult circumstances? And then we see that it is shown in the slide here. Narada Muni, you see the Narad Muni with Veena in this particular photo. Narad Muni and Angira Muni, both of them appear in that particular palace again. And Narad Muni starts pacifying King Chitraketu and his wife Krita Dyuti. Angira Muni is the one to begin the conversation, and Angira Muni asks few questions to Maharaj Chitraketu. He says, my dear Chitraketu, you are now crying. We had already told you that this son will become the cause of happiness as well as distress. Now tell me one thing, Chitraketu, was this son a son of yours in his past life? So Chitraketu Maharaj obviously says no. That son had different set of parents. And then Angira Rishi asks that, are you sure that in your next life you would again get that child as your son? So he says no, that is also not sure. And then Narada Muni, out of his spiritual potency, he brings the child back to life, and the child starts speaking to his mother and father who were in lamentation. So the child starts speaking to Chitraketu Maharaj and Kritadyuti. And Narad Muni asked the child that, my dear child, why did you leave when you have got such a wonderful set of parents who is like king and the queen, and you were the prince? So you would naturally inherit the kingdom. Do you want me to prolong your life in this life itself? And the child says, no, no, my dear sir. The child refuses to continue by saying that, my dear father, Maharaj Chitraketu, can you tell me which exact father and mother are you talking about? Because in so many hundreds of lifetimes that I have earlier taken, each lifetime I have had a new set of parents, and I will continue to have another set of parents in my next life. And this particular life in your home was part of this particular journey, and I don't want to hinder that particular journey towards the lotus feet of the Lord just for having to stay in your palace. Not interested. And when the child speaks the philosophy of the body and the soul, how the body is temporary but the soul is permanent, and each lifetime we have a new set of relatives, this particular transcendental wisdom, it brings the knowledge to Chitraketu and Kritadyuti's heart. And Chitraketu, he becomes such a realized soul that later on he gets promoted to the Vidyadhar Loka. So the point is how even such a cultured, even such a materially advanced person can also be bewildered in the face of difficulties in one's lives. And Srimad Bhagavatam, or basically scriptures, warn that it is not the question of whether such difficulties will come in our life, but it is only the question, when would the calamities appear in our life? Nobody of us can escape. Either the small person or a very great person, both will have to go through difficulties in their own lives. Or for that matter, you can choose any favorite devotee of yours from Srimad Bhagavatam, whether Yudhishthir Maharaj, Parikshit Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, Prachina, Bari, Prachetas, or any devotee for that matter, who did not have to face any calamities in their life. It is not possible. All of them had to go through difficulties. And if we want to avoid being bewildered by being bewildered by having these misconceptions at the end of our life or even during our life, then we need to really practice hearing and chanting very intensely, very regularly. And then, as the purport mentions, that hearing and chanting followed by the engagement in service, submissive service, will lead to realization, as was seen from the life of Chitraketu Maharaj. Subsequently, he became a Vidyadhar, and during that lifetime also he had challenges in terms of this curse given by Mother Parvati. But because he had learnt this art from Narada Muni of not being disturbed and being very strong and steady in his rendering of devotional service, he was not affected when the second time the calamity came upon him. Similarly, we see example of one more uh, great personality who also became bewildered to an extent in a specific circumstances, that of Gandhari. We see that Bhagavatam glorifies Gandhari for her chastity and for her austerities and being a tapaswini. But this great lady, when she came to know that Kunti had given birth to a male child before her, Gandhari got afflicted by envy to such a degree, thinking that now my child would have zero chance of inheriting the kingdom, that she kicked the womb within her, and that womb basically came out. And this was the lady Kunti Devi, sorry, not Kunti Devi, Gandhari, who had received the blessings of great personalities like Srila Vyasadev. And there was one more personality who had also blessed Gandhari. Vyasadev had blessed Gandhari with 100 sons. Do you recollect, Prabhuji's Mataji, who was the other person? Aishwarya Mataji or Ananda Vilas Prabhu or any other devotees? Do you recollect who was the other person?
Is it Lord Shiva, Prabhu?
Yes, yes, Lord Shiva. Thank you, Mataji, for Devika Mataji for a minute. Yeah, so Lord Shiva had also blessed Gandhari, and mainly Vyasadev had also blessed her with 100 sons. So Srila Vyasadev said, my benediction, it cannot go false. So you would have 100 sons. Then he cut that lump of flesh that came out of the Gandhari's body into 100 different pieces and basically put them into ghee, and through that tissue culture, by his potency, Srila Vyasadev, he let those 100 pieces of flesh turn into, grow into babies, and thus Gandhari got 100 sons. But because that act of Gandhari of hitting her womb was done due to envy, all the Kauravas, they were born inherent with that type of envy. So the leader of the Kauravas, Duryodhan, he himself was so much envious right from his birth towards the Pandavas, that envy ultimately caused their downfall and death. So the point is, even such exalted personalities, sometimes they also get bewildered in their own life because of the difficult circumstances created by providence in our lives. So what is the workaround? What is the solution? The solution is Uttama Shloka Vartanam Jushatam. What is that verse? Jushatam Tat Kathamritam. That those who don't do that, they will become bewildered. Those who don't do Uttama Shloka Varta. But as a mitigation to that, if we do Uttama Shloka Varta, then we would not be bewildered. So maybe we take a pause for a minute to see if there are any questions, comments from any devotees on this important verse. This is the very important verse as part of 18th chapter. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Are all devotees still with me, Prabhuji's, Mataji's? Anybody is lost in the description of this particular story?
No, Prabhuji, very clear.
It's clear.
Okay. Okay. Yes. And what happens when we do the regular hearing and reading and studying of Srimad Bhagavatam specifically, it gives not only, it speaks not only about the knowledge about Krishna, but Bhagavatam also explains to us through so many pastimes, like we just saw the pastime of Chitraketu Maharaj and Kritadyuti. Bhagavatam also teaches us the futility of this material world, how whether we are king or whether we are an ordinary sweeper on the street, ultimately the material world is going to get us frustrated for sure. So be ready for it rather than being attached to it. So that is what is also taught in Bhagavatam. And what would also happen by hearing and chanting is that our remembrance about the Supreme Lord, it would also become as our constant nature. Like here specifically, I've given few examples, starting with Maharaj Khatwanga. All of us, have we heard the story of Maharaj Khatwanga before? Prabhuji's, Mataji's, anybody would like to narrate?
Yes,
Anyone?
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prema Prakash Prabhu. Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Maharaj Khatwanga was a great king, and he had many victories over almost all the wars that he fought. While he was getting all the accolades about the courage and strength that he had, he was fighting the last war. Suddenly he asked, "How much time is left in my life?" And the person who was accompanying him said only 1 second. And in that 1 second, he completes all his devotion and gets himself to the transcendental loving service of the Lord.
Thank you, Prema Prakash Prabhu. Just few updates. So, as Prabhuji mentioned, Maharaj Khatwang was a very brave warrior, and because of that, his help was sought by the Devatas to help them fight against the Daityas. And we see that Khatwanga Maharaj, because of his sincere service given to the Devatas became very pleased. And when Khatwanga Maharaj was asked to ask for any boon or benediction, Khatwanga Maharaj he basically asked, "How long do I have before my death?" And the Devatas, they mentioned to Khatwanga Maharaj that he has got one muhurta. So typically, one muhurta is the duration of say 40-45 minutes. And Khatwanga Maharaj, he did not protest or he did not try to counteract that I have helped you so much. Can you prolong my life little more? He did not ask that favor to the Devatas. Instead, he immediately came back to his kingdom, gave up everything, sat in meditation upon the Supreme Lord, and ultimately achieved perfection by focusing his mind and attention on the Supreme Lord. But one important point to notice for Maharaj Khatwanga is it is not that Maharaj Khatwanga practiced Krishna consciousness only during this one muhurta. Not at all. You see the purport. In the purport, Prabhupada mentions, yes. So Maharaj Khatwanga is mentioned herein as a saintly king because even within the responsibility of the state management, he was not at all forgetful of the prime duty of life. That means Maharaj Khatwanga was constantly in cognizance, constantly in understanding of what is his prime duty of life, that is Krishna consciousness. And when accordingly the opportune time came, Maharaj Khatwanga was ready to completely give up everything at a very short notice. In fact, no notice at all, and utilize those 40-45 minutes that he had at his disposal to focus his mind upon Krishna and attain the Supreme Lord ultimately. So, point is, all these great personalities, many a times our mind makes us think that Khatwanga Maharaj could do it in one muhurta, I will also do it in one muhurta. But you see the purport of Bhagavatam, he had practiced Krishna consciousness before. He was mindful of his spiritual duties earlier. Because of that, he was able to perfect his life when the time came. Similarly, we see in the case of Ajamel, devotees are very fond, or people outside are very fond, that Ajamel chanted one time Narayan and ultimately went back home, back to Godhead. But it was not that simple. Vishnu Dutas, when they came first time around, when Ajamel chanted Narayan, they just saved Ajamel from gliding down to hell. But they did not take him back to Godhead immediately. What did Ajamel do? Bhagavatam states that Ajamel went to Haridwar and stayed in the temple of Lord Vishnu for almost close to 20 plus years, practiced Krishna consciousness in the association of devotees there, and then ultimately went back home, back to Godhead. He basically gave up all these sinful activities and took sincerely the shelter of devotees, devotional service, and then achieved perfection in his life. So the point is, Uttama Shloka Vartanam, while our faculties are still working, hands, eyes, legs, and all other senses, we should regularly, intensely practice this process of hearing and chanting, especially from a pure devotee of the Lord. And along with that hearing and chanting, we should engage ourselves in physical service as well. So these two things, if we do, only then protection from the bewilderment at the end of our life is guaranteed. Otherwise, if such a great souls like Chitraketu Maharaj, Krutadyuti, Gandhari at one particular time can get bewildered, then what to speak of us? We are very, very ordinary personalities before them. Any questions, comments, Prabhuji, before we proceed? Hare Krishna. Let me see if I have any other example. Yes. So one last example that I have mentioned in the slide is that of Rukmini Devi. So let me open it here. So it is explained that Rukmini Devi, she was the daughter of the king Bhishmaka. Yes, king, that many great sages, including Sri Narada Muni himself, used to come and visit the assembly of king of this. And Rukmini Devi, in this visit by Narada Muni, she got to hear about Lord Krishna and his glorious name, form, qualities, pastimes from Narada Muni. And since that hearing, she became so much interested in understanding and hearing about Krishna more and more, that ultimately that hearing led to the intense attachment that Rukmini developed for Lord Krishna. And I'll just read the translation. Hearing of the beauty, prowess, transcendental character, and opulence of Mukunda from visitors to the palace who sang his praises, Rukmini decided that he would be the perfect husband for her. Sri Rukmini said in her letter, as read by the Brahmana to Lord Krishna, O beauty of the worlds, having heard of your qualities, which enter the ears of those who hear and remove their bodily distress, and having also heard of your beauty, which fulfills all the visual desires for those who see, I have fixed my shameless mind upon you, O Krishna. And there is another verse, let us see if we can find it out here. Yes, text 43, Rukmini Devi mentions to Lord Krishna in her letter that, my dear Lord, if you ask me to wait for your mercy, I am totally fine. But if you tell me that I am not able to achieve your mercy in the end, then there is no purpose, meaning to my life. I better give up my own body. She writes, O lotus-eyed one, great souls like Lord Shiva hankered to bathe in the dust of your lotus feet and thereby destroy their ignorance. If I cannot obtain your mercy, I shall simply give up my vital force, which will have become weak from the severe penances I will perform. Then, after hundreds of lifetimes of endeavor, I may obtain your mercy. So she is willing to wait, but if Krishna is not going to give her mercy, then she is not willing to wanting to leave as well. And this Rukmini developed this attachment for Lord Krishna even without seeing him even once in her lifetime. Her attachment to Krishna was developed solely based on the hearing of Lord Krishna's praise from Narada Muni. So this process of continuous hearing, chanting, and followed by engagement in service is very, very important for us to advance in Krishna consciousness. So let's come back to the verses. Anyone has any questions, comments? Prabhuji's, Mataji's, Hare Krishna. All right, let us proceed. Text 5. Anybody wants to chant? Hare Krishna. Prabhujis are completely detached. Jagadananda Prabhu, Murli Prabhuji, Hare Krishna. Or who else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Murli Prabhu, you want to chant?
I will try, Prabhuji.
Yeah, okay.
Tavat kalirna prabhavet
Tavat
Kalina
Prabhave
pravisto afiha sarvatah
Pravisto
अपिह सर्वतः
yavad iso mahan uryam
Yavat
ईशो
Isho
महानुर्व्याम्
abhimanyeva ekarat.
Abhimanyu.
अभिमन्यव एकरत्
Translation.
As long as the great powerful son of Abhimanyu remains the emperor of the world, there is no chance that personality of Kali will flourish.
Yes. So who is saying this? Murli Prabhu?
This is
Suta Goswami.
Suta Goswami. Yes, bro. Yes.
Suta Goswami to Naimisharanya sages.
Yes.
Purport?
Yeah. I read the purport, Prabhuji. Shall I
Yeah.
read the highlighter?
Yeah, you can read.
Yeah. As we have already explained, the personality of Kali had entered the jurisdiction of this earth long ago, and he was looking for an opportunity to spread his influence all over the world. But he could not do a satisfactory due to the presence of Maharaj Parikshit. That is the way of good governance. The disturbing elements like the personality of Kali will always try to extend their nefarious activities, but it is a duty of the able state to check them by all means. Although Maharaj Parikshit allotted places for the personality of Kali, at the same time, he gave no chance for the citizens to be swayed by the personality of Kali.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So here we see Parikshit Maharaj through his own example teaching the way of ideal management. So Parikshit Maharaj was basically in his role as the king, he was managing the entire earthly planet. But same principle can also be applied for managing maybe our own family, maybe ourselves in our own personal life as well. And what is that way of management? Srila Prabhupada mentions he did not let Kali an entry. Like in the last chapter, we saw that he gave Kali 5 places to live. 4 places are where, namely, the principles of religion, including tapas, shauchas, daya, satyam. All these are breached, and 5th place he gave was where the gold is stored. So what he did, while these places were technically allotted to Kali, Maharaj Parikshit made it sure that his citizens they lead such exemplary life that nowhere the four regulated principles are breached, and nowhere the gold is stacked to allow the entry to the personality of Kali. So he did make sure that strictly the religious principles are followed very nicely all over the kingdom so that Kali does not get entry, his influence does not spread. So Srila Prabhupada mentions while the disturbing elements would be present in Kali Yuga, whether to let them expand their influence is in our hand. Even now, with the Kali Yuga degradation, we do have means to stop the spread of the influence of Kali if we want to, based on how Parikshit Maharaj has taught, and we will see some practical examples. Yes. So this particular example is of a great disciple of Srila Prabhupada and one of the great devotees our movement has seen, His Holiness Vishnujan Swami Maharaj, who was one of the first set of devotees. And Vishnujan Swami Maharaj, many of you would have read probably, he was for some time part of the Radha Damodar bus party, traveling Sankirtan party, and along with Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he was responsible for amazing preaching and preaching results. And specifically, what we are going to discuss about this great personality today is Maharaj's amazing management when he was a temple president. So what Vishnujan Maharaj used to do, he was such a ecstatic devotee, a great lover of Lord Krishna, and he had so much taste in chanting the holy names of the Lord that in the morning he would just take his harmonium or other musical instrument, whatever is playing, and he would set out for Kirtan, Nagar Sankirtan, as only a one man, as a single person. And his taste for the holy names was so much that devotees would naturally get drawn towards joining him in the Sankirtan. And practically there used to be 50, 60 devotees just following him all across the streets of New York, and with Maharaj leading the chanting and devotees following. And even after coming back, Vishnujan Maharaj would sit on the either on the boot of the car on the uh, or on the front, and he would continue chanting, and devotees would be attached to being with Vishnujan Maharaj and also deriving that great pleasure and taste in chanting the holy names. And finally, when that chanting was done, whatever allotment of services for day-to-day running of the temple, it was such a short period affair that as soon as Vishnujan Maharaj would ask for a specific service, practically 10 different devotees would be ready to volunteer themselves to render that particular service. And thus, he never had to put too much of his head in day-to-day management, but it was all smoothly taken care because of his ecstatic participation in hearing and chanting. And so the point is, if we want to have our own lives as very vibrant and less stress and more at peace, and improve the overall quality of our Krishna consciousness, overall quality of our lives, then we need to make sure that the hearing and chanting is very regular and quality hearing and chanting. That means, say for example, we can chant our rounds by giving a dedicated time as part of our 24 hours, specifically in the morning, or one can give time for Krishna as part of, say, traveling in a bus or a train. Of course, some devotees may have any pressing reasons where they can't give sufficient time or so, but in general, we should try to keep a very solid time for Krishna. And if we make sure that this process of hearing and chanting is very solid, very regular in our own lives, whatever material responsibilities we need to manage in terms of our job, in terms of our family members, in terms of our close relatives, acquaintances, friends, society, etc., all those managements will be done in a very, very smooth manner by Lord Krishna's grace. It won't need much of thought process or too much of a hassle or a struggle. That will get worked out in a smooth manner, provided we nourish our Krishna consciousness properly by daily solid hearing and chanting. Then other management principles will fall in place. But if we just look towards managing the individual work tasks without taking care of the roots, then we will be consumed by so many problems and difficulties, and even the small problems, they will seem like big issues. So with this, we will conclude the discussion today. We covered the initial few verses describing the glorious qualities of Parikshit Maharaj as a Narayana Parayana devotee, as a pure devotee of the Lord. And the main crux of Parikshit Maharaj's managing the kingdom or keeping the Kali away was to make sure that hearing and chanting is happening regularly. Any questions, comments, Prabhuji's, Mataji's, Hare Krishna? Is it too intense? Maybe we'll ask some feedback. Are we able to appreciate what is being discussed? Vani Kumari Mataji, is it clear?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare
I want
Krishna.
to recite a
Recite.
sloka, Prabhuji.
Yes,
That's
Mataji.
why
I will ask you, or maybe start the
okay.
next
Thank you.
discussion.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
I'll
Thank you,
request you,
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Are there any other questions, comments by anyone, Prabhuji's, Mataji's? Not, because today I would like to conclude. There is a orientation session for the next batch, for which I would need to devote some time and prepare as well. Hare Krishna.
Attendance sheet not shared, Prabhuji.
How attendance? I will share straight away. 1 second. Oops. All right. So those of you who were writing the exam can continue. And if anyone wants to appear for